And welcome back to another segment of 10 Count. I'm Steve Kim for UCN Live. Joining me is Michael Montero of Montero Unboxing and Doug Fischer of Ring TV. Gentlemen, the big story last week out of Las Vegas as it related to Berto Mayweather had nothing to do with the fight. In fact, it was Thomas Hauser's story that revealed on May 1st, the night before the Pacquiao fight, sometime after the weigh-in, against WADA code, Floyd Mayweather took a large quantity of IVs, which is, again, against the rules. I find this to be interesting. How much of a story is this to you, Doug?
It's a big story. It casts some shade on Mayweather. There's a cloud of suspicion around him now. Now people have accused me on social media, you're calling him a cheater. And I'm absolutely not calling him a cheater. I have no proof of anything. He hasn't failed a drug test. And I apply that same standard with Antonio Margarito, with suspicion of him illegally wrapping his gloves for the Cotto fight. There's no proof of that. That result hasn't been changed. There's been no formal complaint or anything. I'm against people looking at Manny Pacquiao and saying, well, he must be on something because he went from featherweight to a badass welterweight with speed and power. And I'm against people looking at Juan Manuel Marquez's body and saying, oh, he bulked up with lean muscle mass and he's got zits on his back. I'm not going to call these guys a cheater, but if you want to be suspicious, hey, that's your right, and we have a right to be, especially in this age. Nobody is beyond reproach. Hauser's article was really a damning article pointing the finger at USADA.
Yeah.
It's USADA's practices. Most of the questions he brings up are surrounding the way USADA handles its performance-enhancing drug testing. But with regard to the IV, it's suspicious. The WBC does a 30-day weigh-in, like 30 days out, a month out from the fight.
He was 150.
He was 150 and a half.
Yeah.
And
So he's
walks
three and a
around.
pound. He's 3.5 pounds over his fighting weight. So how did he dehydrate himself?
Michael,
Yeah.
I've talked to
ahead.
people who've made it very clear this is not about rehydrating, that when you use that much, okay, which is like 1,400 times above the legal limit, this is an attempt. It can be. Again, I want to make sure that I'm not casting aspersions, but in certain worlds, when you use that much, you are masking PED use.
You're diluting your urine.
Yes.
Right? And that's something that athletes have done for years in weightlifting and other sports.
Right.
I believe the limit is 50 milliliters within 6 hours. This was 750 milliliters. That's a lot.
It's a lot.
And then you take into account Floyd's history with USADA. And then with the Nevada State Athletic Commission, he is tested for a low TE ratio, testosterone to epi.
It's another marker.
Right.
Right, and he was granted exemptions. Now, generally speaking, when you have a low TE ratio, the next thing that's supposed to come is the carbon isotope test, but USADA was just kind of going,
Yeah.
la, 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 kind of looking the other way. There's a lot of suspicion here when you look at the background. It's not just IV gate, it's the whole background.
Yeah, and you know what makes it worse, guys? It reminds me of Jimmy Swaggart, the televangelist that is so high and mighty and so pious, and all of a sudden they're caught with a hooker in a hotel.
Right.
I mean, to me, you do so much finger pointing. There's an old thing about finger pointing. Three of them come right back at you.
And that's what I want to say. That's, somebody put out a meme that said fraud Mayweather, and the words IV were masked in the letter M.
Oh, those people are
And I
clever.
forwarded it.
49-0 with the Roman numeral 4, the IV. That was pretty good. That was pretty good.
So I retweeted that, and people got mad. They're like, you're calling him a fraud because you think he's cheating. I'm calling him a fraud because he made a huge deal about sort of being this crusader for better testing in boxing.
Cleaning up the sport was his
cleaning
own
up the
words.
sport and wanting a level playing field in regards to a potential fight with Manny Pacquiao back in 2010. And his relationship with USADA, along with the fact that he always fights in his hometown, always fights at his home venue, the MGM Grand, and recently he's had a home referee in Kenny Bayless. He's fraudulent in that he wants a level playing field. He does not want a level playing field at all.
And can I jump on that?
Yeah.
Olympic-style drug testing. He's been going around saying he's doing Olympic-style drug
Right.
testing. He's not. Olympic-style drug testing is 365 days a year, completely random, right?
At any time during the day. They
Absolutely
can come knock
no
you, they can
notice.
wake you up at 3 a.m.
Right. And the only fighter I know that's signed on to that publicly is
Donaire.
Nonito Donaire. That's it.
And the other issue is the retroactive therapeutic usage exemption. This thing came 3 weeks after the fight. And in talking to Bob Arum, he made it very clear. I asked him, I go, did they insist on USADA? And I think at that point, Bob was under orders from Manny Pacquiao, quite frankly, who needed the money, make the fight. And they acquiesced because they had no choice. But, you know, if you look at the track record of USADA from Eric Morales, the Peter Quillen sample that was thrown out, I'll be honest, I think Travis Tygart is nothing more than a guy who is a self-promoting guy who, to me, is exploiting an avenue in boxing for his own gain.
Absolutely.
And USADA, to me, sounds so official. And Gabe Montoya pointed this out to me yesterday. USADA sounds like a U.S. agency because of the initials.
It's not part of the government.
It's not part of the government.
No. They work with the Olympic Committee and other entities of the government. They receive up to $10 million a year in government funding, but they're a private company that you employ to administer drug testing.
How similar is this to Lance Armstrong? The guy who says, I'm clean, but behind the scenes was bullying people, was basically expunging evidence. I think to me, also, you look at Mayweather's gym, he says, I want to have a clean sport.
That's one of the dirtiest gyms in boxing.
Start with his own gym.
Yeah, not just with recreational drugs like marijuana and also performance-enhancing drugs.
Highest TE ratio of all time.
Oh, my God. And that was something, Mickey Bay has had one trainer his entire career. He's had different promoters, different managers, but he's had one trainer his entire career, and it's Floyd Mayweather Sr. And I remember doing the post-fight interview after that fight and noticing how noticeably like his shoulders were capped and there was hair on his shoulders and back, so I never noticed on him before.
Can I tell you a story about that?
He kept saying during the interview, you know, I'm able to fight at this level at my age because I've lived a clean life. Never had a sip of liquor. Never had a teaspoon of alcohol. He said that. Go back and watch it on YouTube.
That fight was against Robert Rodriguez. That was the night before the Baltimore-San Francisco Super Bowl. And I'll never forget texting the manager of Robert Rodriguez, good friend of ours, Frank Espinoza. And I just said, off the record, I go, Frank, I'm suspicious of what you faced. I mean, it was that noticeable.
Yes, it was.
Because Mickey Bay's not exactly what you'd call Gerald McClellan. On that night, he was Gerald McClellan. He wasn't just juiced, he was nuclear active. He was he was nuclear. He was radioactive.
Yeah,
he really
was gamma irradiated. Yeah.
And so I don't know. I think there's questions. And Mike, we talked about this earlier before we went on the air. This ain't over. This story to me is not going away.
No. And you know, it's not just building strength. You know, performance-enhancing drugs can be used for many different things. Recovery,
and
tissue
aiding
repair,
in your longevity.
Exactly. And, you know, from May 3rd, the day after the Pacquiao fight, up until August 4th, when he announced the Berto fight, there was no drug testing.
Exactly.
And Floyd's deal with USADA is such that the drug testing doesn't start until he announces. And people are wondering, why isn't he announcing this fight until a month before the fight?
Michael, Steve, that's the problem I have with USADA is that they are controlled by particularly the name fighters.
And Al Heyman.
Well, Heyman has always been a factor, as Richard Schaefer was when he was CEO of Golden Boy Promotions. When Golden Boy Promotions started, piggybacking on Mayweather's "I'm going to clean up the sport" routine, they started out with VADA. But VADA did their job too well.
And that was the problem.
Yeah, VADA busted two Heyman-advised fighters, Andre Berto and Lamont Peterson, which canceled Golden Boy promoted cards. And Schaefer was pissed as hell.
It was bad for business.
It was bad for business.
VADA's test cost more, the carbon isotope test, but they charge less than USADA charges.
Right, USADA's taking this money, and their practices are just so head-scratching. The Eric Morales case, in particular, where your guy can fail the A and the B samples.
Four times, right?
At least three times. Yeah. But it's the tail wagging the dog, and that's no good. Yeah. When it comes to cleaning up the sport, and it comes to an anti-doping agency that I will support and I will get behind, it's VADA.
It's VADA. I think they've done 15 fights, 15 championship fights. They've caught 3 people already. Yeah. That's a lot more than USADA.
All right, well, that's it for this segment of 10 Count. On behalf of Doug Fischer and Michael Montero, this is Steve Kim saying till the next round, goodbye, everybody.